What's going on, Convicted Mindset fam? I'm Travis Ritchie, and this episode is with my good friend, Tony Hoffman. An incredible and an inspirational story. If you haven't heard it, I promise you're going to be glued to your seats. This man went from heroin addict to complete inspiration. One of the most sought after motivational and recovery and addiction experts in the world. If you have not heard his TED Talk, if you have not followed him on Instagram, you're going to want to. This man started out in a prison cell, got a 4.5-year sentence, and took his life in his own hands. Accountability, 100%. He crushed it, knocked out all 4 of the goals that he made to himself while he was incarcerated. And he's going to tell us more how he got there, both good and bad, and how you yourself can break through any and all limiting beliefs. All right, guys and gals, Travis Ritchie here with Convicted Mindset and my man, Tony Hoffman. You guys know that we bring you the mindset. Forget motivation, forget inspirational quotes. If you're somebody that needs lipstick on the mirror to get you out of bed every morning, we're just not those guys. We're about action and we're about ambition. And so for today, there's something that's incredibly special here. This man, we've kind of crisscrossed the world for the last number of years. He's speaking, I'm speaking, and I have just watched this trajectory. And Tony, I don't know if you ever thought, I get this question a lot. Did you ever think you would be one of the most sought after speakers on addiction and recovery?
No, not even. If we're going back to my past of where my struggle was, absolutely not. No. And then even then, when I wanted to be a speaker, I knew I wanted to make a big impact through my experience, right? But I just didn't quite know what that looked like other than I wanted to make a big impact. As big as it is now, no.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, man, how large it has gotten. For somebody who you look back and you talk about so many things that are just incredible to me. One of the most interesting to me is the spiritual experience that you had. Share with the folks that moment and what you went through.
Yeah. So me personally, I had this Jesus Christ moment, and I'm not going to dig too deep into the whole Jesus Christ moment. It was a coming to Christ thing. But I really want to focus on the mechanics of really just like what happened, right? Prior to this moment, I was self-absorbed. I externally looked at the world for everything, for answers for myself and others, which translated into victim mentalities more often than not. And I couldn't find any type of purpose or contentment within myself. I just constantly felt like I'm lost. There's no reason to be here. And everything that I ever try is never going to work out because it's never worked out previously. Then I have this experience. And like with the snap of a finger, this experience, I stopped looking at the world externally. Right? The world was no longer an external process for me. The world became this internal process. And in this internal process, it was my sole responsibility to navigate and circumvent circumstances based on who I am, what my gifts are, and kind of how my person works as an emotional makeup. And once I started digging into this process, then I started finding that there were these gifts, things that I didn't ask for, platforms that I may have been given as opportunities, and I kind of passed those things up. And that spiritual experience opened me up to this whole world that I couldn't see previously. I tell people, I felt like I was in a prison cell long before I ever got to one. Right? My life was surrounded by concrete walls. It was an external process, so I couldn't see past what my belief system and my perspectives would allow me to see. And then I have this spiritual experience in which turns every wall of concrete into glass. And I could see through each of these glass windows now. And I thought to myself, why am I in this room that I'm in right now? I don't want to be in this one. I want to be in the one that I can see past right now. Right? And then I started doing the work to graduate from the room that I was in, so to speak, and move into these deeper layers of life. And that's kind of what the spiritual experience has done. It's led me on this journey that's like been one transformation of rooms into the next, in which life becomes richer, more abundant, more joy, more happiness, and a much bigger platform to help other people.
Hey, man, you're helping a lot of people. So we're definitely grateful for you. Now, one of the things that I love about your story is you talk about these 4 goals that you set while incarcerated. You're talking to 557,000 subscribers at the moment who may have written goals on a wall, in a book, in a Bible, right? Somewhere in that 5x9, 6x9, in that ad seg moment. What were those 4 goals?
For the 4 goals were to get back on my bicycle and race BMX professionally. I had a gift of racing bicycles. It was on the cover of a magazine at 18 years old. I felt like I abandoned the one thing I was given that I didn't ask for. That was my escape. It was my opportunity to create kind of what I am right now. Go to the Olympics, start a nonprofit organization for kids, and become a speaker.
Go to the Olympics. Where did that come from? Was that just so outlandish that you had to put it down? Or was this like you from a childhood thing? Like where was
it really was like, okay, I had this spiritual experience, and then I realized, okay, I don't think I went through all of this for nothing. Right? I now need a platform. I need a platform in which becomes an institution of change, an institution of inspiration, and an institution of providing strength and hope to other people, right? Which is kind of inspiration. And when I started thinking about me getting back on my bicycle, it was like the stage in which my bicycle would lead me to was the Olympics. That was the biggest stage for racing BMX, was going to the Olympics. And not only was the biggest stage of BMX the Olympics, but also in sports in general, one of the biggest stages in the world is the Olympics. And so it was like, I need to get to the Olympics, not because I want to put a medal around my neck, because I need this stage in which I'm supposed to use as an institution for change.
There it is right there. So I get to talk with these folks on a daily basis, weekly basis that are locked up. And I don't know if you've come across this, but I found that when you set a goal like you set, I like to call them big, hairy, audacious goals. They're huge. They're uncomfortable. Did everybody support you?
Yeah. Very few people.
Everybody believed in you, right?
Most people didn't. My father did. My mother did.
Okay.
My father first, just because he was a former professional motocross racer. And in losing me through this whole addiction process and institutionalized and stuff like that, I never wanted to get back on my bicycle. So when I said I wanted to get back on my bicycle, I think my father felt like, okay, maybe this is really my son speaking, because he never wanted to ride his bike when I mentioned it in his early struggles. And so my father, my mother, and my brother, a Hall of Fame BMXer, Randy Stumphauser, one of my good friends, Robert Rio Frio, and my best friend, KP. That's probably it.
You can literally count them on one hand.
Yeah. And it was, and realistically, even some of the people that were around me, like Rob believed in me, but he didn't, when we sat down and talked about it, he was like, man, I just didn't really think you were going to be able to do it. Like, I supported you in it, but something in me felt like this is too big of a goal, right? Yeah. Like, this is not having touched a bike in 7 years. You've been homeless from drugs. You've been in prison for 2 years. How do you actually make this dramatic of a comeback in a short period of time? People just didn't think it was going to be possible,
Definitely. And so for the guys and the gals that are listening to this, that I think have a lot of limiting beliefs, whether you've been incarcerated for a short time or a long time, like you said, sometimes you don't even need to be in a jail cell to feel incarcerated. And so when a lot of us get to set these big goals and reach for the moon, we have a lot of people that don't really, and sometimes for our best intentions, but a lot of people don't really go, absolutely, Tony, go set the world on fire. You got this. Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with that if you're sitting there right now and you only have a handful of people that you can count on, but you know that you were put through this for more? Like, that you're destined for more. Speak to that person right now.
Man, I'm a basketball person, and I'm going to kind of use a basketball analogy for this. great basketball teams don't stop running their offense and playing their defense regardless of the score. Right? The focus is on continuing to run the plays that you run, the routine that you're in, and eventually momentum will shift, right? All you're looking for is to catch some momentum shift. As soon as momentum shifts, everything that you need is right in front of you. And you're in a position where you can utilize that momentum to your advantage, right? And so when we get caught up externally on people needing to believe in us, things needing to be right in front of us the way we think we need them to be in terms of utilization to manifest our opportunity and create what it is that we believe that we deserve or things that we want, we make mistakes when we do that. But if we focus on what our routine is, and focus on executing what's 3 feet in front of us, our routine, consistently, that over time, we will catch a shift in momentum. And that momentum will start feeding you the things that you need to move forward towards whatever goal it is you have. The issue is that when the scoreboard looks like we're losing by 20 points, 30 points, we start to believe that the game's over.
Yeah.
And as soon as we believe that the game is over, we go from an abundant mindset filled with belief, filled with effort and intention, and we shift it back to victim mentality. It's over, our attitude changes, we stop showing up on time, and we stop putting in the work that needs to be done for us to get that momentum shift. And we basically walk away from what's ours. And it has nothing to do with not being able to receive what we believe we want, or what I truly believe is belongs to you. We walk away from it prematurely. And it has nothing to do with whether or not you're supposed to have it. It has everything to do with your mindset and how you run your routine and stick to your plays and wait for that shift in momentum to occur.
So true, man. It is so true. The mindset really seems to be key. When we first started out, I've been out for 10 years, kind of similar to where you're at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I realized first and foremost was that, I didn't have a background in addiction or recovery. My charges are white collar and really should have never been incarcerated. But I tell people that God had a better plan for what I needed to do. And so for my purpose was really instilling identity into these folks. Mm-hmm. I feel, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, but I feel that for guys like us who have gone through the pit, who've been through the adversity, what I can't stress enough to people is that when you ask for a life of greatness, you sign up for a life of adversity. It's not the other way around. That it's not the Instagram day where you wake up in a certain light, there's no dishes in the sink, all the bills are paid. When we asked for greatness, we really welcomed adversity.
Unfortunately, yeah, it sucks, right?
Yeah.
It sucks, but it's really awesome. It sucks because when you actually commit to that, right? You now say, I'm going to climb the rest of my life.
Right.
I'm not going to stop climbing.
Mm-hmm.
There's just never going to be a crest in which you complete the mission before your time on earth is over, right? You might see these small ones and those are victories, right? When you've reached this level of what you were trying to accomplish, going to the Olympics, starting my treatment center. Some of these moments are small crests, and which when I get there, I get to take a deep breath. I get to about face. I get to look back and see how far I've climbed. And then I say, okay, I need to put more water in the backpack. I need to put more food in the backpack because there's a whole nother mountain that's in front of me that I'm supposed to be climbing. If you don't make that commitment to seeing your best self through, meeting all of your potential, then really what you're committing to is a life of ignorance and a life of foolishness, stagnation, repeated results over and over and over and over again. Things don't change. You just don't see life providing any kind of fruit to you. And that really just comes down to your commitment to stagnation, your commitment to mediocrity, and your commitment to not look inward.
Mm.
Right? If you don't ever look inward, then you don't have to accept the responsibility of climbing for the rest of your life, but you're going to have to accept the responsibility and consequences that come with mediocrity and looking at life externally, right? Others will always have what you want. You will believe that you don't deserve what they have, and you will just spin around chasing your tail for the rest of your life. That's just something that I realized doesn't work for me. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to climb the mountain. And I stopped thinking that I needed to climb the mountain with speed.
Mm.
Right? I just need to climb the mountain.
Yeah.
It's not so much about how much I can climb in one day. It's that I can climb and I can pitch a tent in the spot and say, I did what I needed to do today.
And enjoy that view.
That's it. And tomorrow I'm going to pack up my tent and I'm going to fill up my water canister, my canteen, and I'm going to hit the road and I'm going to start hiking. And I've learned some days I can hike faster than others.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. And so you've been on this journey. And so for those of the individuals who are listening, who may not, have been privy to social media in a little bit of time, we're talking about, you went to the Olympics. You're a world-renowned speaker with a beautiful TED Talk. You have treatment centers. You've got a monster nonprofit that helps kids all over the country. It seems to me life has been pretty easy for you, Tony.
Yeah, that's what if you want to see it that way, sure,
Right. And so what I love is a lot of these guys that I get to chat with and in society are incarcerated, you can usually find that point in your life where you took that left turn, that moment that was real pivotal, that man, as you say, if somebody would have walked up to me and said, this is going to happen in 5 years, I would have never done this.
Mm-hmm.
Walk the people through the adversity and the pain that you have experienced that have got you on that mountain.
Yeah. So, I was like anybody else, really. I was a young kid, got involved in experimenting with mind-altering substances, whether it was nicotine, drinking, smoking weed, the occasional line of cocaine and pills and such. What I didn't realize was that I had some mental health struggles that were really kind of the precursor for my experimentation to lead me down a further path of discontention, losing myself and falling victim to an addiction that was out of my control. I was really trying to fix these anxiety struggles that I was having, my beliefs in myself struggles that I was having, depression issues and suicidal ideation. Like I just hated who I was, despite being on the cover of a magazine and sponsored by companies that weren't sponsoring amateur athletes. As a nationally ranked amateur BMX racer, I just couldn't find any joy in life. And so when I started experimenting with these drugs, there was some joy there. And then that whole addiction piece kind of came in once I introduced myself to opioids, and it just took a hold of my life in a way like nothing else had ever done. Right. Like it just instantly, my mind was only focused on popping pills. My days and my trips were all focused on me being able to get high on Oxycontin. And before you know it, I'm committing a home invasion robbery 3 years later into this deal. It completely changed my behavior, my moral compass, and my values for myself. Because as you trudge down these paths of addiction, the things that you do bring shame and guilt. It doesn't matter who you are, right? And that shame and guilt really robs you of your self-worth. And once you lose your self-worth, you have no belief in yourself for anything. And so you just constantly go further into this pit of addiction. And that's really what happened to me. And it was at the bottom, it was homelessness. And I'll never forget, I was at an apartment and there was probably 3 kids that I knew, 3 guys that I knew, and then a couple gang members that I'd never seen before. And I was using meth and heroin at the same time. One of the gang members said, "Are you really going to use all that?" And I said, "Don't worry, bro. If I die, just throw me in the dumpster." I had no self-worth. Well, after I do this, we go to leave this apartment, and the 2 groups of people go to 2 separate cars. And I watched them get in their cars, look at me in the eyes, back the vehicles up, and then just leave. And I walked the street the rest of that night. I had been homeless already at that time, and I had just reached such a low in my use that people just no longer even wanted to be around me now, right? Like, I'm no value to anybody else. I have no money. I rarely have drugs on me. I'm using crystal meth heavily. So I'm constantly in a state of psychosis and just kind of acting weird and paranoid. And so people don't want to be around that. And, sleeping on the street is something that, I almost wish everybody had to do in their lifetime. Like, I feel like there's two things that people need to do. One is jump out of a plane and skydive, and two is sleep on the street for a month.
Wow.
So people can experience what it's like to be an individual that doesn't know where they're going to go, what they're going to do, and how they're going to get what a human needs to survive, right? And in that experience, I believe that people's compassion and empathy will go up towards people that are struggling, right? But for me, it was this really low point in which, like when you say, did you ever think that you were going to get here as a speaker? Well, no, because I didn't even know how I was going to get high the next time.
Yeah.
Or if I was going to get a hotel that night, or if I was going to score some dope or have some money on me that would land me inside somebody's house to sleep on a floor.
Wow.
Right. And so, and that was just like my life, like the first big vice that I was going to have to cut loose, right? Like, to get to where I'm at was not just getting sober or going through prison and reforming my life. There was bouts of adversity and tests all along the way that most people, I believe, would have walked away from what I'm doing right now because they just would have said it's not worth it.
I love that. Man, incredible story. And you're right. Most people do say it's not worth it. In one of the school districts that I get to work with, they've had 4 suicides this year in one high school. And what I have found recently, and you are far deeper into this than I am, and I'd love your perspective, is I'm getting more notes from parents who say, I'd never thought it would be my child.
Mm. Yeah.
When you're speaking around the country, you speak all the time to a ton of youth. Number one, does it surprise you, the comments? Do they come up to you afterwards and go, oh my goodness, when you told the story about so-and-so, that's exactly what I'm going through with my friend? And then add conversely to that, do you get the parents that come up to you and go, Tony, how do I help my kid? And what do you say?
The stuff that kids tell me is sometimes just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Right. Some of the stuff kids experience, when Ohio was really going through what they were going through in 2015, 16, 17, and 18, when I would go through there, middle schoolers, I had a middle schooler message me and say, I watched my dad's face get blown off outside my window because he tried to rob the drug dealer. I had a female tell me that she was the one that found her mom, who shot her face off in the bathroom because the drug addiction that she was struggling with so much had caused her to reach a point where her mother just said, I'm done. I'm going to kill myself. The abuse that young kids are experiencing, the neglect that young kids are experiencing. And then not only that, what the youngsters are going through on here with TikTok and Instagram, and the idea that they have to have exactly what these individuals have. The women have to look just like the Instagram models. The men have to have everything that Casey Neistat has or the Paul brothers have. And if they don't have that, then they're not going to be able to land a woman or feel good about themselves. And so it's like this whole generation that's growing up with trauma that every generation's grown up with at home, right? And then you have this added piece that's coming from this social world in which people get to tell you who they are without you knowing whether or not that's truly who they are.
Yeah.
Right. And so it leads to all of these struggles and kids trying to find ways to figure out who they are, what they want to be, and how they're going to measure up in the world. And I'm not surprised that suicides are going up. And I'm not surprised that this year I've had 13 schools call me and say that they've had kids overdose from fentanyl and die, because we're in this time where kids are more confused than they've ever been, because everything that's happening is leading them to a further state of confusion. And so when it comes to the parents, and the parents are like, how do I help my kid? Oftentimes it's like, you're going to have to figure out how to show up for your son or daughter in an emotional way, right? There's a disconnect. There's a disconnect in which the parents are not the safe place for this young person, and they're going out in the world and they're finding safety in these things that are changing the way they feel. And until we can empower these individuals or step in and stop them and try and get them into places where they can be empowered through activities or other individuals that are focused on growth mindset or playing sports or band or whatever it is, these type of activities, is that they'll continue to trudge this path of being lost. And it's hard because there's not always something parents can do, right? The parents oftentimes should have been more active before this stuff started happening.
Yeah, you're spot on there. One thing that I like to touch on often is I believe that there's been this erosion of masculinity from the network of community and society. And I think that taking the role of fatherhood, I think that we've really diminished that role. We don't take it as seriously as we should, and perhaps of generations of the past. And so a lot of the guys that I deal with, my comment to them is very simply this: you need to make sure that the conversations that you're having around the dinner table every night are propelling your kids forward and are not setting them up for anything other than a life of greatness. I tell, we have 4 little ones, but my oldest is 10 and he's a boy. And then I got 3 girls, and we talk about failure around our dinner table. I want to reframe what that looks like to them, because in today's world, to your point, if they don't have something that they saw on TikTok or Instagram, all of a sudden they're a little bit less than.
Yeah.
Right. And from a good kid in a good area and with good intentions and good athleticism, you were just going to smoke weed one time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, I think you're spot on. One of the things, too, is I get where some of the toxic masculinity things are coming from, right? But there's like this line in which they overstep and it starts to dilute things. But I do think it's men's responsibility to take a step back and look at how they communicate, just step back and look at how they show up in their relationships, how they show up in their marriage, and how they lead their family. Because just because you have a cock and balls doesn't make you a man, right? Just because you have a job that puts food on the table doesn't make you a man, right? Just because you're married and have kids doesn't mean that you are leading a family. There are responsibilities that come with that. And as Jocko Willink would say, in an extreme ownership, right? In which everything that's happening falls on your shoulders. And just because you're a man, you can't say, I'm putting it all on my shoulders. There are actions that you have to take, things you have to do, conversations you need to have, and things that need to be done for those that are around you, for me, in my opinion, to be considered a man. And it doesn't matter to me if you're a Russell Westbrook, right? That has a really outlandish fashion style, right? Because he could show up for his family in more ways than the guy that's wearing a Carhartt shirt and Carhartt jeans with some work boots, who instead of going home and showing up to his family, goes home and shows up to a 24 case of Keystone Light.
Yes, sir.
Right?
All day long. You're spot on.
So you could sit around and call Russell Westbrook a fairy, but what if Russell Westbrook showing up for his kids emotionally, meeting all of his wife's needs, taking care of the house and leading it into a direction of peace, prosperity, and perseverance? And the other guy that looks like a man with a big beard and a Carhartt getup that goes and bangs a hammer all day at work, comes home and drowns himself in alcohol. That ain't no man.
No, you're absolutely right. And to be able to have the conversations, right? So one of the things that I revel in every week, I get to take my boy and all of his friends to lacrosse. And it's that hour in the car where we don't listen to music, right? I want to take full advantage of what's going on in everybody's life. We've got a boy in the car that has a fractured household. We've got a boy in the car that has a blended household, right? There's all of these different things and these emotions and feelings that are going on. A couple of them are 2 and 3 years older than my boy. And so I want to make sure that when they're with me, I can change their programming.
Right. Well, and you got to think too, you're their hero.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
If you're their hero, right, they want to adopt your way of thinking and doing, which is why it's so important for us to make sure that the way we're thinking and the way that we're doing is going to lead these young lives to the place that we want them to go.
Yes.
Right? Is
Yes.
because at the end of the day, there are things about my dad that I have adopted over time. As I've gotten older, I've become a little more like my father than I ever thought I would be in some areas, right? Like I was never financially smart growing up, but as I've gotten older, I've become more financially smart. I learned that from my father. My dad's work ethic is something that's passed on to me. While my father didn't have those conversations in the car because we didn't not listen to the radio, and he wasn't very emotional and communicate strongly to us in those types of ways. I learned from watching what he did, right?
Love that.
And watching what he did allowed me to get to this place that I'm at right now. And so, you know, I told Darren Waller on his podcast, one of the biggest things is I rarely listen to music when I'm in the car, because that time in the car is time for reflection, meditation, manifesting, and spending time with myself, listening to my thoughts, understanding my feelings and listening to those, and having these conversations with myself that I never used to be able to have, right? And these conversations are empowering. They're casting vision, seeing myself achieve goals years before I ever achieved them. You know, one of my big things right now is visualizing sitting on the floor as a season ticket holder on the floor for the Mavs, right? Like I go through this process of sitting there, what I'm wearing, things that I'm going to do when these shots get made, and how it's going to feel being a part of something so inspiring to me, because I love basketball, right?
Yeah.
And I have to do this while I'm in the car, while I'm on the plane, and in silence, because this is how I'm creating the energy that says this, I'm going to have this.
Yes.
Right. But you also have that for your kids.
Yep.
You're going to have this. I'm going to teach you how to have thought-provoking time.
Yeah.
How to reflect on losing, how to reflect on winning, right? We don't just go from one instance to another without reflection, without forethought.
Yeah. Oftentimes the conversation that you're having with yourself when you're not really talking, those seem to be the most important. On the heels of that reflection and the time that you spend with yourself, do you have a specific habit? Do you have daily habits or weekly habits? What keeps you grounded from somebody who is living a life of sobriety, from a former addict perspective, and now you have a life of abundance, right? You kind of have everything at your fingertips. So what keeps you grounded, and what's that routine like for you?
Spirituality and emotional awareness is huge for me.
Okay.
Right. And I say spirituality is not in showing up to church on Sundays. Spirituality as in honesty with self and others, forgiveness, making sure that I'm willing to do whatever it takes for me to move forward. I look at something like discipline as a spiritual aspect, right? Is my ability to stay disciplined. And so I make sure that I'm heavy on honesty with self and others. Stay heavy on my willingness in my daily life. Those things keep me grounded in gratitude. The other thing on the flip side of things, I believe, what was the second part of the question that you had? It was
your routine. Your routine.
So when I get up, I'm a slow person to get up.
Yeah.
So you might think, oh, Hoff's militant. He gets up 6 o'clock, everything's snap, snap, snap. No, it used to be that way. It's not so much that way now. I'm slow to get up. I take my time to get up. And I try to make sure that I have very few distractions as I'm getting up. I'm not instantly checking my phone the whole time. I like to get my coffee going. I like to get my dog taken care of. And then I like to start my day. Now I'm on the road right now, and I'm only home on Saturdays. So really what I'm doing is getting up, taking care of brushing my teeth, taking a shower, and getting my coffee and getting my day going. And when I get in the car, there is no music. right? That is my routine. There is no music. Like I have to sit with myself. I have to reflect on how I feel. I have to re-examine some of these feelings and get honest with myself. And then I need to make sure that I'm communicating with somebody on my support team every day.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love that.
I keep it simple.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder for me to be in some of these militant routines that I used to be in, right? Because I'm traveling so much. My life is so dynamic, and then I'm in and out of airports. I'm in different hotels. I'm traveling with a very small amount of stuff. And my schedule day to day for speaking is so different. It's not like I can get into, I'm up at 8. I do this at 9. I do this at 10, like I used to be.
Right. Right. No, I agree. I'm very much the same way at the moment, even though I'm still up early and at it. The reason that I am is to fill up, I believe sweat creates sanity for me personally. So I get after it first thing in the morning. But after I get my 2 little ones to school, that next hour is spent on the floor with my 2 little girls, because that fills my cup up before I go out and answer all the 100 emails and beat the world up. I've got to make sure that my mind is right and my body is right, and make sure that my little girls know that they're number one.
Yeah, I love that. That reminds me of my business partner at the treatment center. He's so into his girls. I love it because they're getting so much from him,
Big time, big time. Let's end. You were in a particular jail cell, and someone had written a quote, or maybe it's a quote, maybe it's a thought. Someone had written some thoughts. I believe it was on the ceiling. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. And it's if you look it up, some people say it's a Gandhi quote.
Okay.
The quote is, be careful what you think, because your thoughts become your words. Be careful what you say. Your words become your actions. Be careful what you do. Your actions become your habits. Be careful what you make a habit. Your habits become your character, and your character becomes your destiny. The quote was transformative for me because the spiritual experience removed the concrete walls. I saw that there was a door, a glass door, but it was locked. When I read the quote, I learned that there wasn't actually a physical key that opened up the doors to the depths of life. It was your mind, right? Yep. And this quote was the blueprint of how I was going to have to move through each and every single layer and depth of life. It wasn't going to be achievement. It wasn't a TED Talk. It wasn't getting to the Olympics. It wasn't any of that. It was everything that started with my thoughts, which became the words that I spoke, which then became the things that I did, which over time would become my habits. My habits would be me running the offense. Even if I'm 20 points down, I just stick with the offense. And those habits would be my character. And eventually there would be momentum shifts. And momentum shifts came in stages. And every time they came into a stage, I would open up a new room and there would be something there waiting for me, right? A speaking career, a TED Talk stage, honor at the Olympics to coach Brooke Crain, opening up a treatment center. What's next? I don't know. But right now I'm running my offense, and my offense is managing this so I can speak with this, become this person that does these things that are habitually who I become. And that person will take me exactly where I want to be. And it's so important for me to connect with individuals that are in deeper rooms than me, right? It's glass. We may not be able to have direct conversations, but in a post just the other day, I said, no greater time in the world have we had the ability to connect with people that can lead us to a life of abundance, which means we now do not have to read books to follow or learn the things that these other great people are doing. We can get on podcasts. We can do this. We can follow people on Instagram. We can follow people on TikTok. These people will show us how to think, right? What to say, how to do these things. And that is what will take you wherever you want to go.
Brother, I can't thank you enough for that. tell the folks out there, you speak for all audiences around the world. How do people not only get in touch with you to follow you and to hear more about your message? How do people get in touch with you to bring you to their particular institution, organization, school, everything?
Absolutely. TonyHoffmanSpeaking.com is where my website is. You can contact me with my contact form there. You can find me on Instagram, Tony M. Hoffman, Facebook, Tony Hoffman Speaking, Twitter, although I don't use Twitter as much anymore, Tony M. Hoffman there. I have a podcast, One Choice. Tons of outlets in which you can engage with me, contact me, and I engage on all of those platforms. Like I said, Twitter, not so much anymore. So any of those other ones, if you were to engage with me there, you'll get a reply from me and we can discuss whatever it is that you're looking to discuss.
I love it, man. I love it. This will impact the lives of thousands. I know it for a fact. I know that there's people who are listening to this who needed that last push, that inspiration from an individual who's been in their shoes, who's walked their journey and, has come out on the other side and has persevered. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your gifts with us and with the world. And hopefully we'll see you very soon on the floor of the Mavs game.
You will. I guarantee it. All right, Travis. Thanks so much, bro.
I appreciate you so much. We'll see you soon.
Take it easy.